ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तां सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण। So yesterday we discussed till the 17th verse. The Brahmanas were trying to give good instructions to King Vena, trying to pacify him and bring him to the path of Dharma. There are almost 10 verses spoken by the Brahmanas. We discussed till the 17th. We'll start from the 18th verse. Yasya rashtre pure chaiva Bhagavan yajna purushaha Yajyate svena dharmena Janair varnashramanvitai. Somebody can read translation. 18th. 18th.
The king is supposed to be pious in whose state and cities the general populace strictly observe the system of 8 social orders of Varna and Ashrama, and where all citizens engage in worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead by their particular occupations.
So, yasya rashtre pure eva varnashramanvitaihi janaihi Bhagavan yajna purushaha svena dharmena yajyate. Yasya rashtre, in the kingdom of such a particular king. So the previous verse described that how when the king protects the citizens from the thieves and the corrupt ministers, then he can actually levy taxes and he can actually enjoy himself in this world and also in the next life. So this verse is referring to such a king who is performing his duty of giving protection to the citizens. In such a yasya rashtre, in such a king's states, rashtre pure, in such a king's state as well as a city. Puri refers to different cities. The Supreme Lord, Bhagavan, who is the Yajna Purusha, the master of the sacrifices, Supreme Lord is worshipped by the people. Janair, how is worshipped by the people? Varnashram Anvitai, by executing their individual duties according to Varnashram. So when the king is actually performing his duty, he is giving protection to the people and he is levying taxes because he is performing his duty. When a king is dharmic, when the king is ensuring that people are following their dharma, in such a kingdom, the Lord is actually worshipped by the people according to their varnashram. So here, Prabhupada explains that the state's duty and the citizen's duty are very nicely explained in this verse. So the government, the activities of the government head should be so directed that ultimately everyone engages in devotional service to the Lord. And the king is therefore supposed to see the things go on nicely. And the citizens are situated in the Varnashram and the Varnashram Dharma. So one thing we find in general among the psychology of the people is that we generally talk about others performing their duties while forgetting what our duties are. So many times the people say condemn the government or the head of the say particular institution, but but they will be completely oblivious to how they are not actually following their duties. So both are actually important, the king's duty and the citizen's duty. And further Prabhupada says the word Yajna Purusha indicates Vishnu or Krishna. So in the perfect human society, people are situated in the orders of Varnashram and are engaged in worshipping Vishnu. Yata pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvam idam tatam swakarmanatam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manava. So in the dharmic society, people are more concerned about their duties than about the rights. But in the adharmic society, people will be fighting for the rights and they will not know, they will be very careless about their own duties. So this is that is why there are three types of atheism. Like one kind of atheism is that atheism in the garb of religion. Dambo darpo. Damba means posing oneself to be a religious person. But actually internally one is a person is an atheist. Essentially atheism in the garb of religion means dharma dvaji. And another is atheism in the name of secularism. They apparently speak some kind of equal to all religions or universal language there, but they are in a secularistic language, but they are also internally they are atheistic. And another kind of atheism is atheism which is manifest in the form of fighting for the rights and while being completely careless about one's responsibilities. So these three kinds of atheism, it's not some scriptural quote, but these are commonly visible in the current times actually. The commonly visible in the recent times because just like we see Namam Dushkrutya Muda Prapadyante Naradama, that verse Krishna talks about four kinds of people who don't surrender to him. And when we read the purports of the acharyas to this verse, different acharyas, they put different people, different categories of people in different types of people in one of these four categories. Ramanujarya will mention some categories of people in this four. Baldev Vidyabhushan or Vishwanath Chakravarti. So whoever, when the acharyas were living, at that time, whatever they were observed in the society, people who are not surrendering to the Supreme Lord, who was present at that time, they put those people in one of these four categories. So in the same way, if we see these three kinds of atheism, these three types of people, secularist people or the Dharmadvaji or the fighting for the rights movement. So these three people will also, they don't surrender to the Vishnu or Krishna. So they can also be put in these categories. So these are the, so here Prabhupada says that every citizen engaged in an occupation renders service by the resultant occupations of his activities. Varnashrama Charavata, Purushena Parapuman, Vishnur Aradyate Pumsa, Nanyat Yatosha Karanam. So the government has to see that the citizens are thus engaged. So today people engage in the government and the people who rule over the citizens have to have no respect for the Varnashram Dharma and complacently feel that the state is secular. And then the Brahmanas say, Tasya Ragnyo Mahabhaga Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Paritushyati Vishwatma Tishtato Nija Shasane. So in such a kingdom, the Supreme Lord, who is the Bhuta Bhavana, the protector of the people, who is the Vishwatma, who is the soul of the universe, the Supreme Lord is Paritushyati, he is satisfied with that king, who is actually following his instructions. So the Brahmanas are telling the Vena to follow the instructions of the Lord, to rule according to the scriptures. So what is the secret of the happiness? It is the fact that government's duty is to see that the Supreme Lord is satisfied by the activities of the people as well as by the activities of the government. There is no possibility of happiness if the government or citizenry have no idea of Bhagavan. The conclusion is that without engaging in bhakti, neither the citizens nor the government can be happy in any way. At the present moment, neither the king nor the governing body is interested in seeing that the people are engaged in bhakti. So, Nija Shasane indicates that both the government and the citizens are responsible for the execution of Varnashram Dharma. So, they are essentially the Brahmanas are instructing the king to follow his Varnashram Dharma to ensure that the common people are following their Varnashram Dharma.
Roji, as an individual, unlike we find that Prabhupada throughout Bhagavatam in so many purports, Prabhupada talks about the duties of government and these kind of purports where the government should take responsibility and citizens should be doing like this. So as an individual practitioner in my own life, now how to relate this purport, like what is a practical application of these kind of purports in my life so that quite often for means it remains at a very abstract level for me. So individually, what is the practical application of these kind of purports in today's life of ISKCON and society?
See, so here they are instructing telling the king to follow his dharma. So the general principle is that to follow one's duties of Varnashram Dharma. So currently, definitely none of us are the kings, or even the people whom we interact, nobody is a king. But the general principle is that following the Varnashram Dharma. And that is applicable for everyone. So whomever, when people are, suppose somebody is a family head, so he is like a small king of the family. So therefore, he is supposed to ensure that he follows his Varnashram Dharma as the member of that family, and also educate the other people in the family about their duties. And when we are dealing with the people, suppose students or the grahasthas, so we educate them about the Varnashram Dharma. And of course, one has to practice Bhagavad Dharma with the Varnashram Dharma.
But we find that husband and wife both working in software companies, and children are settled in some other abroad nations. So where is Varnashram?
See, even among the devotees, the current situation, like people, so they may be Brahminical, or they may have the nature of a, say, Vaishya or something, but they are working in some company. They may not be performing their Varna Dharma. That also has sometimes has many, because of many difficulties. There are many difficulties sometimes. Suppose Brahminical Dharma means what? Brahminical Dharma is you just teach even without charging. Suppose if a person were to perform such an activity even so today in the today's diamond age, will he be able to maintain his family? There are many practical considerations are there. So in the current times, suppose there may be many limitations in performing the Varna Dharma. Suppose somebody is say Kshatriya or a Vaishya or a Brahmana, but still they may not get opportunity to perform their Varna Dharma. They may get opportunity to perform their Varna Dharma only maybe in Saturday, Sunday, or certain apart from their working hours. At least they should attempt to do that, whatever time they have, the extra time in that. And but the ashram dharma, ashram dharma, Varna Dharma has in some place, in some people's life, there may be more limitations. Some people may be able to do that, but even that there will be some compromises here and there. Ashram Dharma, that they can follow. Even some they're married, at least ashram dharma they should follow. At least, okay, if they are working, so at least stay together in a family and then work. Instead of one member in some other city, another member in another city, the children are studying somewhere else. Like, it's not even a nuclear family. It is like nucleus is also separated. So at least okay, we are studying, we are working, our students children are studying in some modern schools, but at least stay together in one place as a family. One can stay together. So we can definitely, there are so many compromises in the Varnashram Dharma in the current time. But if we completely neglect, if we completely neglect, the situation will become even more worse. But because I cannot follow purely, so let me not worry about it only. So that is very extreme only. We understand we can't follow purely, but we can have the pure aspiration, and then with whatever practical situation is there, within that, let us try to follow to the best of our capacity. And with the pure aspiration. Because even the Pandavas had to perform their Apad Dharma. They couldn't perform their Varnashram Dharma during the Vanvas and during the Agyatavas. At least during the Vanvas, sometimes when the Brahmanas would approach the Pandavas for some help, they would perform the Kshatriya Dharma. Although they didn't have the kingdom to rule, they would perform the Kshatriya Dharma of giving protection to the Brahmanas, getting back the cows of the Brahmanas. But during the Ajnatavas, they couldn't even do that actually. They had to work under the king. But sadly, the sad part is in Kali Yuga, for most dharmic people, the major part of the life is the Ajnatavas actually. Huh. For Pandavas, 1 year was the Ajnatavas. But for most people, major part of the life is Ajnatavas. And some people at least realize that, oh, I'm spending most of the time in Ajnatavas. And there are other people, they don't even realize that they are in Ajnatavas all the time. So it is basically a compromise in the sense we have to see within my situation, how can I best practice? But to the extent a person follows dharma, that creates a stability in that person's life and also the people around him. And there will be satisfaction. And Bhagavad Dharma is the dharma of the soul, but Varnashram Dharma, even that, whatever to the capacity it is possible when we follow it, it will help individually, in the society level, in the family. Yeah, it is a complete mixture actually. In one sense, you are working for the company. Overall, it is a, say, Shudra role. But within that, there can be Brahmana Shudra, Kshatriya Shudra, Vaishya Shudra, like that. Mixtures are there. These four things are there all the time. The Satya Yuga, there were no Varnashram. Everyone was in practically a Brahmana only. But even within that, there will be some shades will be there. Some shades. But of course, when we talk about devotees, yeah, we have to be aware of the situation. But like one letter Prabhupada says that one devotee was working in some, say, company, and I think he wrote something to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said that no, a devotee, when whether he's working in a company or not, don't see from oh, he's a Shudra from that point of view. Like that, he says. Because when we are observing a devotee, we should not judge a devotee from the bodily designation, either varnashram or a family or this thing. But so that is a viewpoint. But of course, the practical situation, we have to make the best use of the bad bargain. Whatever situation we are there, within that, we have to make the best use of the bad bargain. So we also have to realize sometimes brahmacharis, we may think, suppose Bhagavatam contains many sections on Vanaprastha ashram, retirement. Like that, this kind of section comes quite often in the Bhagavatam. Because Bhagavatam has the essential mood of the Bhagavatam is the detachment, the Krishna Bhakti with the flavor of detachment. So that kind of sections come often in the Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada also speaks at different times about Varnashram. So sometimes we are eager about when one should retire, what age. Sometimes people, I remember, I see people discussing. So at the same time, but then we don't realize that as brahmacharis, how much we are following our dharma. Suppose we discuss in detail about the, say, Vanaprastha dharma, about when you should retire. But as brahmacharis, if we see, brahmachari is supposed to beg actually. Say, how many of us have the experience of begging and actually getting the food? Like, we don't have the experience. So one thing why I'm saying is that, like, while talking about sometimes other people's dharma, you should also be aware that the way brahmachari is supposed to follow his dharma, how we are also away from that, from the way it is described in the scriptures. So we may say, oh, grahasthas working in software companies, say shudras, this one. But what about us brahmacharis? Like, we are supposed to beg, but we go to the kitchen. There are at least some 8 items are there actually. Uh, so not just begging actually, but so many items are there. So maybe even the grahasthas who are earning maybe 2 lakh or 3 lakh rupees per month, they may not have the opportunity to eat hot food right from this thing. So I'm just wondering, like, so just loudly thinking. So just we have to be just careful that one of the point is that sometimes we are more concerned about other people who they are not they are not able to they are not following their varnashram dharma, but then sometimes we forget about where we are in our position in the varnashram dharma. So not I'm not pointing out you, or in general I'm just making this point. So yeah, varnashram dharma, at the same time, yeah, there are some certain core principles of the different ashramas, and those core principles they have to be kept in mind, and to the best ability we have to follow them. Like Krishna mentions in the Uddhav Gita, the main duties of a brahmachari is service to the guru, menial service to the guru, or in the ashram the guru is not accessible, and study of the shastra, swadhyaya. In the 4th chapter, Krishna says that swadhyaya, I think the yajna of the brahmachari, study of the scriptures, or the hearing. And main duty of a grahastha is charity and performance of maintaining the other 3 ashramas and performing sacrifice, like that. Vanaprastha's main duty is to austerity and philosophical disposition towards the life. Sannyasi's main duty is preaching and having a mindset of equanimity. So these are some core principles are there, and they have to be, we have to follow, we should try to follow it to the best of our ability. So varnashram is you cannot completely neglect it. At the same time, it's not, we cannot follow in the pure sense in the current time. We have to make the best use of the bad bargain and try to improve step by step. Okay. Twentieth verse. Tasmim stushte kim aprapyam jagatam ishwareshware loka sapala hetasmai haranti balimadrita.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped by the great demigods, controllers of the universal affairs. When he is satisfied, nothing is impossible to achieve. For this reason, all the demigods, presiding deities of different planets, as well as the inhabitants of their planets, take great pleasure in offering all kinds of paraphernalia for his worship.
So they are saying, if the Lord is pleased, what cannot be achieved in the universe? So all the beings and the devatas offer tribute to the Lord of Lords with great respect. So the Vedic civilization is summarized in this verse. So this is like nothing but similar to Atapumbir Dvijasreshta Varnashrama Vibhagashaha Samsiddhir Haritoshanam. The human society has artificially created a type of civilization which makes one forgetful of his relationship with the Supreme Lord. Modern society even enables one to forget the Supreme Lord's grace and mercy. The Varnashram system is a natural way of living. or it is the most scientific system of civilization. So when a person is living more naturally, according to his natural propensity, or living uh, um, being situated in the, say, proper varna and ashram, so then when the person is living naturally, then there is a satisfaction on a material platform. Then that helps on a practical level, it helps a person to think about the higher purpose of life. When a person is disturbed on a material platform, then sometimes it becomes difficult to think about the higher purpose of life. Yeah, when we talk about bhakti, the cause of bhakti is bhakti. Siddhantic point of view, bhakti is independent of varnashram as a siddhanta. But on a practical point of view, varnashram creates a stability on a material level, which because of that, a person can think about the higher goals of life. Like for example, Siddhantic point of view, bhakti can be practiced in any situation. But on a practical point of view, like suppose you board the bus. Okay, maybe in Maharashtra, we don't have buses having the buses, you don't hear any film songs or something. But at least I know in Tamil Nadu, I don't know about other states. The Tamil Nadu, when you go into the buses, all the buses have film songs. Some years back, they had a video also, but now I think they don't have video. So they have film songs. So and the film song is being played at the loud voice. And suppose some film song or something which you have heard previously, the same song is being played. So from Siddhantic point of view, you can practice bhakti anywhere. You can chant anywhere. But on a practical point of view, in such a circumstance where there's a loud song is going on, this one, so that sound is so much, it's difficult to think soberly about. You want to think about some book, or you want to chant properly or something. Practically, it is difficult. So there's a practical consideration and a Siddhantic consideration. Say Prabhupada says one purport in Bhagavatam first canto, that if a person hears Krishna Katha with rapt attention, one can see Krishna in every page. But it is not possible to hear with rapt attention unless a person is pure in his mind. And it is not, one cannot be pure in his mind unless a person is pure in his activities. And which is not possible unless the person is pure in his habits. Or which is not possible unless a person is pure in his activities of eating, mating, sleeping, and defending. So in one sense, Prabhupada, if we read this purport, Prabhupada appears to be saying that when you have a pure lifestyle, you are eating, mating, sleeping, and defending, when they are pure, then you can hear with rapt attention. He's trying to say that bhakti, apparently it looks like bhakti making dependent on what toothpaste you use, or whether you are eating organic or inorganic, whether you're eating chemical food or non-chemical food. It's apparently making bhakti dependent on that. But this is not be seen from a Siddhantic point of view. It's to be seen from a practical point of view. From a practical point of view, when we live a lifestyle which is more natural, that means varnashram, then it helps a person to, it helps one to create a proper legacy. for practicing individually the Bhagavad Dharma and also propagating Bhagavad Dharma in the long run. So these purports are about Varnashram, and the purpose of Varnashram is to please the Lord. Modern society even enables one to forget the Supreme Lord's grace and mercy. So consequently, modern civilized man is always unhappy and in need of things. So the Krishna conscious movement was started to convince the general populace to adopt the best process by which to satisfy the Supreme Lord. Can read next verse, translation. 21st.
Dear King, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with the predominating deities, is the enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices in all planets. The Supreme Lord is the sum total of the three Vedas, the owner of everything, and the ultimate goal of all austerity. Therefore, your countrymen should engage in performing various sacrifices for your elevation. Indeed, you should always direct them toward the offering of sacrifices.
So, like the previous point I was mentioning about that purport that Prabhupada talks about the pure in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So there was one devotee, he was doing some work on preservation of the seeds and protecting the Deshi cow breeds. There are certain original Deshi cow breeds in different parts of in different states in India. So, like he was doing certain activities in that, and then there was some report on that. So then other devotees asked that, like, are these activities related to bhakti actually? So why this information is put here in this group like that? So it's like we are into pure bhakti, but why they say about preserving the seeds and preserving the original breed, cow breeds? There are like Dangi cows and Kangeya cows, Kar Parker, like that. So how is it related to bhakti like that? There was a question raised. So that time I was thinking, so two things came to my mind. One is that this purport, like when Prabhupada says that hearing with rapt attention, pure habits, pure eating meat. So when you talk about pure eating means, yeah, we eat food offered to Krishna. But even more, when you increase the level of purity more and more, that means you also talk about the food grown with, food grown in a pure manner, or food grown without using the chemicals, or drinking the milk from the desi cows, or drinking the milk from the cows who are maintained, taken care of properly. So in that sense, to preserve the original breeds of the cows, that helps one to maintain the purity of the milk, and that will in turn help one to hear with rapt attention. In that sense, it can be seen in relation to that. So when we don't see that, then we may think, oh, these are disconnected. This is not the, this is not connected to bhakti at all. One can see, completely disconnect that and completely reject that. Or we can see that, oh, this is also helpful when we maintain the purity of the milk, that will help one to hear with rapt attention. And about maintaining preserving the seeds, if you see in the agriculture, seed preservation, about in the organic farming, seed preservation is one of the important things. And in the Bhagavatam 8th canto, in the Matsyavatar, when he told Satyavrata offered prayers, Matsyavatara gave one instruction. He said that, I think 7 days from now, there will be an annihilation. So at that time, I will come, you board me, I will take you on the boat. And there he mentions that you come along with me, along with you, the Saptarishis will come, and the different seeds also you bring along with you. The seeds, Saptarishis, and you yourself, and the Vedas, all of them, you board in that particular boat, which I will be actually driving. So there, Matsyavatar is telling that you also take the seeds along with you, like that he mentioned. So Bhagavatam, Bhagavatam's main thing is Krishna Bhakti, but I'm saying this is one verse which comes where there is indication about seed preservation, because when you preserve the original seeds, that helps in maintaining the purity of the food, and eating the pure food will help one to think in a pure way, will help one to improve one's concentration. So in that sense, the lifestyle is also connected with our practice of bhakti. So in that way we can see. So here the Brahmanas conclude that when all the Brahmanas engage in performing sacrifices in your kingdom, all the devatas who are plenary expansions of the Lord will be very much satisfied by their activities and will give you your desired result. Therefore, do not stop the sacrificial performances. If you stop them, you will disrespect the devatas. So especially for a Kshatriya, it is very important that they ensure that the sacrifices are being performed. Even the Yaksha Prashna, there are 4 questions which Yaksha is asking to Yudhishthira Maharaj about the Kshatriya. The Kshatriya, he says, one of the answer he says that Kshatriya should ensure that he, not only he should conquer the kingdoms for increasing dharma, but he should also perform more and more sacrifices. The natural, say, propensity of a Brahmana is that he wants to acquire more and more knowledge. But that has to be balanced with also sharing more and more knowledge. Not simply accumulating. The natural, say, propensity of a Kshatriya is he wants to increase his influence, maybe wants to get more and more kingdom. But that should be balanced with also increase in the performance of the sacrifices. In the Bhagavatam, so many kings, how they were performing sacrifices. The natural propensity of a Vaishya is to earn money more and more. Vaishya is never satisfied with a certain amount of money. Krishna mentions in the Uddhava Gita. But that propensity cannot be suppressed, but rather he has to balance that with also increasing proportionately charity. So that's so. So here, therefore, the Brahmanas are saying that do not stop the sacrificial performances. Yajna dana tapa karma natyajyam karyam evatam. And by stopping them, you'll disrespect the devatas. Yesterday also I mentioned that verse. Who is the living dead person? The living dead person is one who does not perform the 5 yajnas. So then the Vena is replying. So you see, Vena gives a very arrogant reply. He speaks some 6 verses. We'll recite together. Vena vuvacha balisha bata yuyam va adarme dharma maninaha ye vrittidam patim hitva jaram patimupasate.
King Vena replied, "You are not at all experienced. It is very much regrettable that you are maintaining something which is not religious and are accepting it as religious. Indeed, I think you are giving up your real husband who maintains you and are searching after some paramour to worship."
So Vena is telling that like he is supposed to be a pratinidhi, representative. He is telling that you are giving up the real husband and you want to actually have a relation with a paramour. the Devatas and Vishnu. So, like this verse is something like Vena is propagating determination in the mode of ignorance. Buddhi in the mode of ignorance. Adharmam dharmam itiya manyate tamasavrita sarvartan viparitam cha buddhi sa partha tamasi. Saying that you accept what is adharma as dharma, and giving up the husband who maintains you, you worship an illicit lover. So here he's calling them as a balisha, as a behaving small children. So you see, all these instructions of the Brahmanas, they did not make a slightest difference in Vena. It is said, Upadesho hi murkanam krodha yaiva shamayacha shamayana payappanam bhujanganam vishayaiva mrutayana. When you instruct the fools, it is like feeding milk to the serpents. So Vena's attitude is that he is like his ignorance is so deep that even after hearing such good instructions, he does not perceive even little bit that he is doing something wrong. Sometimes the people, when they, although they may not be able to change their wrong lifestyle, but at least they perceive to some extent, oh, I'm doing something wrong. When they hear some good instructions, they associate with good people, at least to some extent they become conscious of their mistakes. But Vena had such a thick level of ignorance that he doesn't perceive that he is doing anything wrong. Rather, he is completely justifying his action based on wrong philosophy. So, if why the conditioned soul wants to justify his wrong actions? Because when the conditioned soul does not justify, he will feel the guilt for his wrong actions. And when a person is having a guilt, then one cannot enjoy peacefully. It is like he is enjoying, but there is some thorn of guilt is pricking from within. So in order to get rid of the thorn of guilt, the conditioned soul adopts the means of justification with a wrong philosophy. So he creates an alternate philosophy to justify his position. So that is why it is said that once there was a Hitler's top man, one top right-hand man. He was responsible for killing some 6 million Jews. So there was another person was massaging this Hitler's top man who held the particular mission of killing 6 million Jews. And this masseur, he spoke to that person, like when he was massaging this Hitler's top man, he told that, see, I believe in the philosophy of non-violence. I am a strict vegetarian. I believe in non-violence. And this masseur was shocked actually. Like he's saying that he is believing in non-violence, but he only killed 6 million Jews. And then masseur asked that, if you believe in non-violence, that how is that you killed 6 million Jews? Then that person said that, see, it is unfortunate that we had to do that for the good of the world. That means like he didn't feel anything bad about killing those Jews. He felt that I had to do that for the good of the world. So the false ego is so subtle. The false ego can use the philosophy which is supposed to remove one's ignorance, but the false ego can use that same philosophy to justify one's own ignorance. So Vena is also trying to do like that. So then he says, speaks the next verse. This verse is similar to the exactly opposite to uh, Krishna's verdict. Avajananti mam muda manushim tanumashritam. So Vena says that Avajananti ami muda nriparupinam ishwaram nanu vindanti te badram ihaloke paratracha. So those out of gross ignorance do not worship the king, who is actually the supreme personality of Godhead. Such people experience happiness neither in this world nor in the world after death. And then he says that you people are so much devoted to the devatas. Indeed, your affection for these devatas is exactly like the affection of an unchaste woman who neglects her married life and gives all attention to her paramour. So he is questioning their chastity or loyalty to dharma. You can read 26-27.
Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Indra, Vayu, the master of air, Yama, the superintendent of death, the sun god, the director of rainfall, Kuvera, the treasurer, the moon god, the predominant deity of the earth, Agni, the fire god, Varuna, the lord of waters, and all others who are great and competent to bestow benedictions or to curse, all abide in the body of the king. For this reason, the king is known as the reservoir of all demigods, who are simply parts and parcel of the king's body.
So these verses of the Vena, these two verses especially, these two verses can be seen as two verses exactly opposite to Yata Taror Mula Nishechanena. By serving Vishnu, all the devatas are pleased, everyone is pleased. But here he is saying that the king is the composite of all the devatas. So by serving me, all the devatas and Vishnu, everyone will be pleased. So he's taking the position of Vishnu actually. So and then, like for example, Saraswati Thakur was told by Gaur Krishnadatta Babaji Maharaj, do not accept disciples. But Saraswati Thakur accepted so many disciples. So once one devotee asked, like, like you didn't, how are you following the instruction of your guru? So he said, like, I didn't, I understood the heart of the instruction of my guru. So he told not to accept disciples. So all the disciples of mine, I consider them to be representatives of my Guru Maharaj. So I don't consider them as the people who are supposed to serve me actually. So here, a spiritual master is supposed to be worshipped like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the person who is in the position of a spiritual master, he is considering the disciples not to be like his disciples, but as a representatives of his Guru Maharaj. But here, the king, who is supposed to be the representative of the Devatas and the Vishnu, is saying that by serving me, all the other people will be served. Therefore, you are neglecting me. You wanted to perform different yajnas to worship the different Devatas. You stop all those yajnas, just serve me only, then Devatas will be pleased. So it's a, and then finally he says that essentially we can also see, finally he says that therefore without envy you should worship me by your rituals and bring the offerings to me. Who except me is the first to enjoy the offerings. Essentially saying that I am the source of everything. He's imitating the Supreme Lord. Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabho mata sarvam pravartate. So Vena is making the same statement, claiming himself to be the Supreme Lord. So when the Vena spoke like this, then the a sinful king, thus the king who became unintelligent due to his sinful life and deviation from the right path became actually bereft of all good fortune. He could not accept the requests of the great sages, which the sages put before him with great respect, and therefore he was condemned. So, one of the quality of the demons is that they are disrespectful to the authorities, Shastra, as well as the persons who represent the Shastra, the Brahmanas. So we find it several characters in the Bhagavatam, like Daksha Prajapati. Yeah, Prabhupada says one place the Daksha Prajapati is an incarnation of offenses. How he was disrespectful to Lord Shiva. Here, Vena was disrespectful to the authorities. And as soon as one disobeys the authority, he immediately becomes very sinful and loses his good fortune. And the king was so puffed up and impudent that he dared disrespect the great saintly personalities, and this brought him ruination. So, like there are in the Bhartrihari's Niti Shataka, Bhartrihari talks about, I think, in the Pandita Paddhati, when he talks about the nature of the learned people, then one shloka he says that how a king should never attempt to control the Brahmanas. But here the Vena is exactly is rebellious and disrespectful towards the Brahmana. So especially one of the predominant psychology in Kali Yuga is that in Kali Yuga people have disrespect towards the superiors or the authorities. So our people, like when Prabhupada went, the philosophy of the hippies was that don't actually accept anybody above 30. So Kali Yuga, the effect of Kali is that it makes people lose faith in the authorities and makes people independent. So makes people independent, not accept the authorities. It also manifests in like accepting an authority, okay, formally accepting a say authority. It also manifests in the form of the say this live-in relation, or people they don't want to get married. They stay together, but they say we don't want to, but we are not married. Because when we get married, we become bound by certain rules and this thing. Or somebody like doesn't want to, like just wants to stay independent. So that is like the same psychology also manifests in the spiritual field. How it manifests? I am spiritual but not religious. People say that. But what is the essential mindset behind that? They say like, I am spiritual, but I am not religious. That means that I am not affiliated to any sampradaya. I'm not accepted any guru, but I am spiritual. I go to temples, but I'm not affiliated to any guru or sampradaya. So, because I observed sometimes people say that actually. So they feel that if you get affiliated to the sampradaya, sometimes sampradaya is translated as a sect. But sect is different, sampradaya is different. When we talk about sect means when you are associated with a sect, you are groomed to some narrow point of view. You are groomed to certain sectarian narrow point of view. So many times sampradaya is translated as a sect, but sampradaya is, the real meaning of sampradaya is very much different from what a sect is. Sampradaya, if you take this word, sampra plus daya. So sam means samyak. Pra means prakarshena. Daya means the act of bestowing. The act of bestowing. The sampradaya, it gives the complete or perfect. When a person gets connected to a sampradaya, one gets the complete knowledge. One gets complete knowledge. So when a person gets the complete knowledge, where is the question of being sectarian? So only when a person gets a incomplete knowledge, then a person becomes sectarian. So therefore, when people say that, so I am spiritual but not religious, that means I'm not affiliated to any sampradaya. I don't have any, I will not accept any guru or this thing. Sampradaya, I mean sampradaya, bona fide sampradaya, which can give the complete knowledge. So why I'm saying is that in Kali Yuga, one of the prominent mindset, or what we say the ethos, is that one doesn't want to accept certain authority. So this mindset of, okay, I'm spiritual but not religious. That is something like, oh, we stay together but we are not married. Sampradaya, you are getting married to your guru actually. You are getting married to this thing. And spiritual but not this. So here Vena represents the disrespect towards the authorities actually. So then what is the response of the sages? The sages, they become greatly angry actually. The sages were insulted by the king, and Vena thought himself to be learned, Pandita Manina, and he refused the request. So Brahmanas became angry with him. So this anger is not born out of the mode of passion. Generally, the anger which is born out of the mode of passion, a person acts impulsively. When his knowledge is covered, a person becomes angry. But here the Brahmanas, they were angry, but they suppressed their anger, and then they had a very peaceful dialogue, respectful dialogue with Vena. And then after that failed, then they became angry. So it's not the anger in the mode of passion. So then they said, Hanyatam yesha papa prakriti darunaha jivan jagadasavashu kurute basmasad dhruvam. The sinful person should be killed. He should be killed. If he continues living, certainly the sinful person of cruel nature will quickly turn the whole world to ashes. So here Prabhupada says saintly persons are generally very kind to all living entities, but they are not unhappy when a serpent or a scorpion is killed. At Prahlad Maharaj's prayer, it comes. So it is not good for the saintly persons to kill, but they are encouraged to kill the demons for exactly like serpents and scorpions. We can appreciate the extent to which the saintly sages actually controlled the king. If the king or government becomes demoniac, it is the duty of the saintly person to upset the government and replace it with the deserving persons who follow the orders and instructions of the saintly persons. So this also is another important point, that the Brahmanas, how they were responsible, they appointed a particular person, and then sometimes what happens, they appointed this Vena, and then when the Vena was not doing properly, then they did not become callous. It's not that they remained absorbed in their sadhana. They came to rectify, to correct Vena. So sometimes, say, suppose certain person is appointed as an authority, and then you find that, and then the person who appointed him as an authority, he becomes completely aloof. Suppose if the authority commits certain mistakes or making some wrong decisions, then other people are suffering in the ground level. But the people on his above who appointed him an authority, he becomes completely aloof. And the common people have to deal with the same immediate authority. And even when they say, suppose raise the issue to some superior, but he's not ready to interfere because he remains completely aloof. So this is one extreme. But if you see in the Vedic culture, for example, in any kingdom also, the king would have many ministers, many people to give counsel, people under him. But even with all those king, ministers, everything, but still the king would go in disguise to the kingdom to find out what the common people are thinking about him, what the common people are perceiving about the general rule of the kingdom. Means like without depending on the other authorities who are appointed by him, the king would try to perceive the situation at the ground level by going in the disguise. That shows that he is not completely aloof. So sometimes, say, people, one person appoints him an authority, and then one becomes completely aloof. So that we find sometimes in management. Another thing we observe is that, okay, you find that the person whom you appointed as an authority is doing some mistakes or making some wrong decisions. So then, without first talking to him, giving him a chance to correct, see, I have appointed you as an authority to follow these principles, to make decisions according to these principles, but that these decisions which you have made, they are against the principles, they are against our principles. So what is your explanation? Why did you make such a decision? So can you rectify it? So first have a dialogue, and then if that person is stubborn about his way of thinking, then you may take the action of removing that person and replacing some other person. But suppose you don't even have a dialogue with the person, and suddenly we come and say that, suddenly we announce, oh, this person is removed, this whole committee is dissolved, or this person is removed, and then some other person is appointed. Then that will create a kind of a distrust actually. The people will think that at least, okay, if I'm making mistakes, if they had spoken to me, I would have learned to I would learn whatever my mistakes. They should have at least given me the opportunity to have a dialogue. So sometimes this extreme may also be seen. But here the Brahmanas, what we see here is that the Brahmanas, they did not remain aloof. They appointed Vena as the king, and they did not remain aloof. When they saw Vena was making mistakes, they wanted to rectify it. And then what procedure they followed? First, they had a dialogue with Vena, and then finally, when it failed, then they decided to remove him. In fact, they took the extreme decision of killing him. So there, so this impudent man does not deserve to sit on the throne at all. He is so shameless that he even dared insult the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada says that a pure devotee immediately becomes fiery with anger when he sees that Lord Vishnu or his devotee is insulted, and that is the duty of a devotee. Although the devotee is meek and humble, it is a great fault on his part if he remains silent when the Lord or his devotee is blasphemed. So, but for King Vena, who is inauspicious, who would blaspheme the Lord, by whose mercy one is awarded all kinds of fortune and opulences. So he should be shown no mercy and he should be killed. In this way, thinking like that, manifesting their covert anger, now they manifested that anger overtly and they decided to kill the king. Vena was already as good as dead because of his blasphemy. So without using any weapons, simply by chanting the mantras, they actually killed King Vena. Then it is described that Sunita, she became aggrieved and she decided to preserve the dead body of her son by applying certain ingredients and by chanting mantras. And we'll see we'll take a break and then continue from 36th verse. So then, so these sages, we can see in these verses also the principle of how one should not hear the blasphemy of the Lord. It is not just the Brahmanas, they felt personally insulted actually. Not because of certain personal vengeance towards Vena, they killed. No, Vena openly blasphemed the Lord and he stopped all the religious activities. Therefore, as the last measure, they did that. So then, once the sages, after taking bath in the river Saraswati, they began to perform their daily duties by offering oblations into the sacrificial fire. So at that time, they began to talk about the pastimes of the Lord. 36, na? So they were absorbed in doing Harikatha. 37th verse. Vikshyotitam tadotpatan ahur lokabhayankaran apyabhadram manataya dasyubhyo na bhaved bhuvah.
In those days, there were various disturbances in the country that were creating a panic in the society. Therefore, all the sages began to talk amongst themselves. Since the king is dead and there is no protector in the world, misfortune may befall the people in general on account of rogues and thieves.
So when they saw at that time, because of no king, the disturbances had increased. And then because of no ruler, and then the thieves, they started increasing their activities. So these purports, Prabhupada says that whenever there is a disturbance in the state or a panic situation, the property and the lives of the citizens become unsafe. At such a time, it is to be understood that the ruler or the government is dead. All these misfortunes happened due to the death of Vena. Thus, the saintly persons became very anxious for the safety of the people in general. The conclusion is that even though the saintly persons have no business in political affairs, they are always compassionate upon the people in general. So it is not that the people were only devotees. People in general. People in general. So thus, even though they are always aloof from the society, out of mercy and compassion, they consider how the citizens can peacefully execute the rituals and follow the rules and regulations of Varnashram Dharma. That was the concern of these sages. So we see these sages they were just performing they had no possessions, they were just performing, doing their Harikatha. But the nature of absorption is that absorption in Krishna Katha or holy name, if it is disconnected from Jivedaya, then that absorption is not a true absorption. It is not a complete actually. Jivedaya, Name Ruchi, Vaishnava Seva, they are all actually interconnected. If the Name Ruchi is disconnected from Jivedaya, then it's not true Name Ruchi. He cannot even, one can also not sustain in that platform. Here these Brahmanas, like this episode, we can see these Brahmanas, they were just satisfied in their sadhana. They were going to perform their sadhana, and suddenly they saw that the common people, there was a dust storm which was raised. The common people were chased by the thieves and rogues. So that is the next verse actually. So when the sages were carrying on the discussion in this way, they saw a dust storm arising from all the direction. The storm was caused by the running of the thieves and rogues who were engaged in plundering the citizens. And then they could understand that there is a great deal of irregularity. And without the government, law and order completely collapsed. And although the great sages could subdue the disturbances by their powers, just as they could kill the king, they considered it improper on their part to do. Thus, they did not attempt to stop the disturbance. So one thing, as I mentioned, Name Ruchi disconnected from Jivedaya. Another is Name Ruchi disconnected from Vaishnava Seva. So this episode we can see from this, what we can learn is that Name Ruchi should not be disconnected from Jivedaya. These sages were talking about Krishna in some secluded place, but suddenly they saw the common people were so much troubled that they were not able to perform their normal varnashram duties. So then they wanted to do something to correct the situation. So that shows that their Name Ruchi was not disconnected from the Jivedaya. And the example for Name Ruchi, how we should not be disconnected from Vaishnava Seva, we can see the episode of Indradyumna Maharaj and Agastya Rishi. Agastya Rishi, Indradyumna Maharaj was in one sense absorbed in, he was doing deity worship, but we can see in terms of, he was absorbed in the deity worship. But at that time when Agastya Rishi came, he actually saw Agastya Rishi, but he continued to remain absorbed in the deity worship instead of trying to welcome that Vaishnava who has come. Because there's a principle in deity worship. Suppose if you are doing deity worship, if a Vaishnava has come, if nobody is there to receive that guest or a Vaishnava, one should stop it and receive that Vaishnava and then continue the deity worship. But here, Indradyumna Maharaj's deity worship, or what you can say Name Ruchi, was not, it was disconnected from the Vaishnava Seva. Name Ruchi, I'm saying that he was exclusively focused on only deity worship, the service to the Lord. But the Vaishnava had come, he saw it, but he continued to remain absorbed. So then the result, the story goes further. So therefore, if we see the prayer of Parishit Maharaj offered a very beautiful prayer that Punascha Bhuyat Bhagavat Yanante Rati Prasangascha Tadashrayeshu Mahatsu Yam Yam Upayami Srishtim Maitraschu Sarvatra Namo Dvijebhyah. If I have to take birth again in this world, let me have attraction for the Lord, friendship with the devotees, and also compassion towards the common people. So it's a very integral prayer which has all the three principles actually. So at this point, the Brahmanas were, this is the 41st verse, is a very beautiful verse, important verse, which especially highlights this principle, how the Name Ruchi should not be disconnected from the Jivedaya. Brahmana samadrikshanto Dinanam samupekshakah Sravate Brahma tasyapi Binna Bandat Payoyata.
The great sages began to think that although a Brahmana is peaceful and impartial because he is equal to everyone, it is still not his duty to neglect poor humans. By neglect, a Brahmana's spiritual power diminishes, just as water kept in a cracked pot leaks out.
So if a peaceful Brahmana who sees all equally, samadrik, but ignores other suffering, his spiritual power diminishes just like a water flowing from a broken pot. So, uh, so you see that what to speak of the devotees and the Kshatriyas being obliged to stop the suffering of the people, if even the Brahmana, peaceful and seeing all beings equally, if he ignores the suffering, then even his austerity as a Brahmana dissipates. So Brahmanas, one of the qualities that equanimity that comes often actually. But when a person remains neutral at the wrong time, when innocent people are suffering, then by that neutrality, by not doing anything to like remove the suffering of the people, you end up supporting the wrong people. And by that, one's own spiritual credits get diminished. See, for example, once Krishnanand Prabhu asked Radhanath Swami Maharaj, like how much I want to chant more and more rounds. But how do we balance that between chanting and preaching, like that he asked? So Maharaj mentioned very profound answer. He said that when a person follows the morning program properly, carefully, properly, then that will be in one sense sufficient for one's spiritual protection. And beyond that, one will advance more by giving more than by chanting all day long. Of course, we have to preach, we have to read the books. We are not disagreeing. There's no doubt about it. But the point is, when a person simply devotes all the time only in reading or only in chanting and not actually share, does not actually share with others, by that one cannot make more progress. In fact, a person can make more progress by giving than by doing sadhana all day long. So here, because these Brahmanas, they were just performing their sadhana peacefully. They could have thought that, oh, we can just continue to perform our sadhana. But then they are saying that if we don't do something to remove their suffering, then our spiritual credits will get leaked away like the water in the pot with a hole. So, and also we can see that like 2001, there was this WTC attack, World Trade Center attack. So at that time, some devotees, they made some comments that, oh, these people, they are just suffering their karma actually. We don't have to be bothered about these things. These people are just suffering their karma. Or sometimes some earthquakes or different things happen. Or some common people say, Kashmir people were just overnight, some 5 lakh people were just evacuated from Kashmir. So one may think, oh, these people, I think they are suffering their karma, therefore they were evacuated. Sometimes we can just make such kind of statement. But this, we should not use the philosophy of karma. Philosophy of karma should be, you should make a person more responsible in one's duty and not to simply remain aloof actually. So sometimes we may speak the philosophy of karma. Oh, these people are just suffering their karma. But by that, we are essentially showing our hard-heartedness, but not doing anything to help the people in the practical level. We are simply showing our hard-heartedness. So at that time, when the devotees made certain statements, like Hridayanand Maharaj, he wrote an article in the BTG. Feelings and philosophy, like that, as the title of the article. So he mentions that does the philosophy of Krishna consciousness demand only indifference to the tragic events of this world? Sometimes by using the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, people become indifferent to the tragic events of this world. So such kind of indifference or aloofness, that is like a attitude of a jnani actually. We don't, we have to do something to, even though they may be suffering materially, but at that time, whatever we can do something materially, we have to help them. So it's a very beautiful article you can go through in the BTG. So Hridayan Maharaj says that, for example, like suppose, first of all, we can imagine that what it would have felt like for us to have been on one of the 4 planes that were hijacked and destroyed. Secondly, we will probably have to honestly admit that we would feel significant discomfort, pain, or anxiety when we are in such a situation. Suppose we were in such a situation, we are not so transcendental that, oh, whatever may happen, doesn't it affect me? So therefore, like, we have to understand that we are not truly in a transcendental platform. In other words, we should not be more detached from the suffering of others than we are from our own suffering. We should not arrogantly dismiss the anguish of others as if we are beyond anguish. A devotee who is truly transcendental to material suffering and who would not have suffered at all in one of those 4 airplanes or in one of those 3 buildings would be a more exalted pure devotee, and as such would feel great compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. So even the person who is completely transcendental, suppose a devotee who was actually in one of those planes, but still he is not at all affected by anything happened, but even such a devotee would feel for the suffering of others. Then what to speak of how, when we are actually not in the transcendental position, how can we simply say, oh, these people are just suffering their karma? So therefore, those who are not compassionate and who dismiss as trivial or unimportant such great suffering are not actually demonstrating advanced detachment in Krishna consciousness, but rather they are demonstrating a disturbing lack of common empathy and are in fact embarrassing our movement by their neophyte response. Of course, he writes further. So here also these Brahmanas, they are not simply remaining neutral. At the same time, they understood that, oh, we cannot take up the position of being a Kshatriya to rectify the situation. So this purport also, if you read the purport, Prabhupada talks about neutrality. When there is a calamity in human society, they cannot remain impartial. If they do not do something to relieve the distressed condition of human society, it is said that due to such neglect, the spiritual knowledge diminishes. So it is said about neutrality, it is said that hottest places in the hell, this is just by some philosopher, the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who in times of great moral crisis maintain their neutrality. So neutrality, the sense that, of course, in the Bhagavatam, we find Balramji exhibited transcendental neutrality. He didn't want to take part in any of this, any side. But Balramji is a part of a Leela, but we can learn some lesson on the practical level. Balramji, ultimately, he ended up supporting Duryodhana, actually. when Bhima beat the thigh of Duryodhan, and then Balramji was about to attack Bhima. He started questioning Bhima, and there's a Bhagavatam just described just 1-2 verses only. Bhagavatam doesn't describe much, but if you read Mahabharata, there is a long conversation between Balram and Krishna. Balramji was about to attack Bhima, but then Krishna stops, and then Krishna has a long conversation. So here Balramji played a neutral role, but he ended up supporting Duryodhan. So of course it is a Leela actually. From a Leela point of view, say Balramji is like the black pepper in Malpua. Black pepper in a Malpua is opposite to the taste of Malpua. But by being opposite to that, it enhances the taste of the Malpua. So Balramji apparently playing the role opposite to the will of Krishna, he is enhancing the taste of Krishna Leela. From Leela point of view, but from more practical lesson point of view, that in the time when there is a time of great crisis, better you take clearly, I am not neutral, I take the side of this person. Better you take the side of dharma instead of being neutral actually. So then at that time we end up supporting the wrong person.
Guruji, sometimes some senior devotee also ignore this, like this point. Now recently in Bangladesh, our temple is some attack and some devotee also injured and died. So we are discussing among us, but some senior devotee commenting, we should not discuss like this point. This is a Lord's arrangement. Lord know better what is better to devotee. This place is already discussing place, or this place is not good for devotee. So his arrangement, he took them away from the Udam. How can I understand this? Those who are senior, but they are this philosophical understanding is different.
It's a very valid point actually. I saw with my own eyes actually. Wow. not to mention the names, but so there was, after the Bangladesh attack, there was a meeting happened in one place. So there was a government official, different people were called, some government official and some other dharmic organization, they were called, and some ISKCON representative devotee was there. So then the government official, he made a very natural point. He said that ISKCON is the affected party actually. So you are organizing different protests, showing your protests everywhere. So he said that you take an appointment at the Bangladesh consulate, and then when you go and you officially make a complaint there that these people have attacked our temple, and it's not in Bangladesh, it's other place. Said when you make a official complaint in the Bangladesh embassy, then that message will directly go to the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. So he made it's a very natural thing. Suppose you are protesting everywhere, but where you are supposed to file a complaint to the official authority, you don't do that actually. Then what is the purpose of that protest? Only for show. So he just made a natural point. So then that authority he mentioned in the in the open public, this one, he said that see, Krishna played a neutral role in the war, in the Mahabharata war. So we are also going to be neutral. Said, and then he said, like, we just want to be thinkers, and we want you to take actions. We want others to take action. We just want to be thinkers. But the point is, we are the affected party. So I had a question that like we can think about it, or there could be whatever alternative opinions they can raise. But my point was that what see, if we see our own example of founder Acharya Prabhupada, when he was dealing with the Juhu land, he went through so much of opposition, and to the extent that his own disciples, they lost faith in the Prabhupada's vision. They cancelled the deed without asking Prabhupada. But Prabhupada, till the last moment, he did not give up the fighting spirit. If we read in the Leela Amrita, there is one section in the Leela Amrita in that whole episode. Finally, when the land is obtained, Prabhupada says that, oh, at last we had a good fight, like that he says. So Prabhupada did not give up the fighting spirit. That is the founder. He didn't give up the fighting spirit. He didn't take some AK-47 or something, but he protested. Like he devised a different means to actually not to go away from the land. And the founder Acharya is having that fighting spirit. But as the followers of founder Acharya, when the founder Acharya's murti was burnt, and the Prabhupada's murti was burnt, and devotees were killed, and the temple was burnt, and if we don't show the fighting spirit, then how are we true followers of founder Acharya? And then another point which came to my mind, on the other hand, we also have a fighting, we have been fighting some court case with other Ritviks for the past, say, 20 years, 25 years maybe. And they have a wrong philosophy. They may be offensive to the Prabhupada disciples. All those I'm not denying. But still, they are chanting the same holy names. They are distributing same Prabhupada's books. They are worshipping same Radha Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityanand Prabhu. So in one sense, they are within the family, but there is a deviation. So why not? But there we are fighting, actually investing crores of money since so many years. But we can just, instead of fighting for the property, we can just fight for the philosophy by discussing, by debate. So this is the question which came to my mind. Prabhupada said that we should be a lamb at home and lion at chase. So when there is within the community of within the community of devotees, say another devotee is within our own sampradaya, or it could be our own offshoot from ISKCON, or it can be sometimes other devotees or other dharmic groups within our own sampradaya. So there we are supposed to fight philosophically, while actually respecting them. They may be following the, say, whatever dharmic culture they are following. For that we respect them, but we debate with them philosophically, not fight for just for property or something. We had to fight for philosophically. But when there is an attack from outside, so there we have to make some different means to protect ourselves. We cannot speak only neutrality. That's what I can think.
Prabhuji, about not being neutral, because there is always constant upheaval in the material world everywhere, and there are always people in distress. So what is the balance between like feeling for that cause at the same time maintaining a spiritual practice? Because there is always, we find there's so much suffering is there in material world.
No, so you have to take the necessary measure. These Brahmanas, what they decided to do, they found out, they decided to appoint a suitable king. Prithu Maharaj as the king. That's also there. So we have to find out, so how to protect our temple community, this one. We have to find out some suitable measures. We have to find out some mechanisms for self-protection. Appoint suitable, say, security guards with a gunman, or train people, devotees who have the propensity with the this
like
thing for self-defense, or collaborate with other people. Collaborate with, just like yesterday I was mentioning that Like for maintaining the temple, we collect donations even from general pious people who may not be following pure devotional service. Uh, in fact, I am sure that they must be maintaining the temple, providing the temple substantial amount of donation. General pious people, they give some donation to maintain the temple. So similarly, there are general different Hindu groups. They may be working on the Hindutva level or nationalistic level, but we can collaborate them with them for self-protection and for a general, even when the common people are affected, we should show some general empathy. We can't just say that we can be a show blind eye to them. So these are the different means.
Yes, Prabhuji, means I understood in context of we protecting ourselves, but
Hmm.
like in this chapter, this Brahmanas, they're doing for not only for themselves, they're showing concern for people in general. But
Hmm.
also we find that so much in Kali Yuga is progressing, so everywhere there's so much problem is there that how do we make any practical difference?
Hmm.
Like at what level we are supposed to
We
show
have to
compassion?
work within our circle of influence. We can have a larger circle of concern, but action should be in circle of influence.
And how the circle of concerns practically manifest in life of devotee, Prabhuji, because
Circle of concern practically it manifests. Like you reach out to more and more people, educating people. When you give true knowledge, then the people who are getting rightly educated, at least you are removing their ignorance. You are educating them in the proper principles of dharma,
like
and that you are making some difference in their life. And when wherever they function, they will make some difference.
that you shared about one calamity when that attack was there, the
Hmm.
planes attack, WTC. So what should have been a devotee's response? But at the same time, we find that such events that was a very big event happened and a lot of people died. But similar incidents happening almost daily, every part of the world like that.
Yeah, wherever when it is happening near to us, we can't do something happening in some other continent in some other country, but something which is happening the close by in our own city or close by, there we should definitely make some statement, empathizing statement, and do something because people when people are in a distressful situation, that is also sometimes conducive for giving Krishna consciousness. You can give some physical help, say medical help or prasadam, and also give some philosophy, this thing. They become receptive.
Regarding what Dishan Prabhu was asking and how you what you shared in that regard, there are always multiple situations, like how to act can be a discussion. I am not saying that what they did or not did, whether they could have done something else, but I'm just saying that whenever I have to evaluate my situation of action, I try to see what is my role in the whole situation. So if I am put in the position of a leader, where I am supposed to take a decision on what is the appropriate action of an ISKCON representative, then I am empowered by the parampara to do something. Otherwise, I know in these situations like this Bangladesh attack was like a national, not a national issue, it was an international issue. An international ISKCON GBC was discussing it. So it was nothing that I can just change. And I should be a good subordinate, that is my dharma. If my varnashram duty I don't perform and rebel by telling criticism about all the people above, then I am not doing my part of the dharma, then I have nothing to represent ISKCON further. So that way I see that the ISKCON GVCs with their maturity, with all the pros and cons, they took a stand of Harinam protest and all. And I feel that that is what I have to do as my humble role. And at an eventual situation, if I'm in some way place where I should take decisions with the ISKCON leadership, then I should be equipped, like you're sharing principles from Vena section, that I should be able to understand how to deal with situations as a leader. And in that situation, if I chant holy name properly, if I take shelter of Vaishnava, then I will be equipped to be, means the bhava is right, to be samvedanshil, to be concerned, but how to act should be according to our uh, appointed role.
Yeah. See,
Otherwise, what happens, Pruji, in ISKCON movement, from ABC to GBC, everyone can comment on everything. And we become blasphemous to the system of the GBC. So that becomes actually counterproductive to the ISKCON movement's appropriate flow of hierarchy. So like here, Prabhu was asking a very pertinent question, where a senior devotee is saying some statement. In what context he said it, that is not understood. So then what happens is that that senior devotee may become a bad guy. And then that person may not be followed, and that may destroy the immediate dharma which he has to do. So that is a bigger concern for our individual situation than the larger Bangladesh problem. At our level, I'm talking. So at the end of the day, what did we do? We became disconnected from being empowered to do any role at the higher level eventually also. We have to change the situation also. Suppose GBC took a stand which may not be appropriate from our perspective, from our humble perspective. Then also to be empowered to do that role, we have to grow in the hierarchy by being in our role in an appropriate way. Then we become empowered eventually. So usually in ISKCON movement, I have seen devotees taking so many stands from, actually PTC is commenting on presidents. What is the use? He doesn't know the maturity of the president. He doesn't know what type of anxieties it is. So unless we become mature to appreciate our own humble position, we cannot take roles to comment on people also. So that's why I'm just sharing, because the context in which he shared, and then you also said some comments on the situation, but I don't see any reference of any GBC talking in this same spirit, that this is something which should not have happened. GBC has, so it has to come from somewhere. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm talking about. No, like as my role is very simple.
yeah,
actually.
one thing is that when we do send criticism, it should be in a constructive way, actually. It should not be simply to create distrust or disturb the faith of the people. That should not be the purpose. But as a subordinate, when we are working under somebody, all of us, everyone is working under some subordinate, or even say somebody is a GBC is working under the say GBC body or like that. So one thing is that the ultimate authority even for GBC body is actually the scriptures, the right principles in the Shastra books are the basis. So whichever role, when we are all of us were working in the subordinates, so ultimately we follow a particular authority because one is expected to show, he is expected to follow certain principles in the Shastra. So suppose when we perceive that, oh, this is not followed, then by following the proper culture and the etiquette, then we can raise that issue in a constructive way, actually. And that constructive criticism, it is good for the overall system, actually, because when we allow that constructive criticism or asking questions, that is the inbuilt corrective mechanism for the whole system. Otherwise, suppose if we only keep the people, you cannot ask questions only, or you cannot, then because of that, in the long term, even suppose some people have certain issues, but we are not allowed them to actually raise those questions or put forward their opinions. The long term, it is not good for the system. At the same time, in the name of allowing those questions, we cannot just give room for certain, just some casual, irresponsible comments to disturb the faith of the people in the system. So in that sense, we have, yeah, even we are raising questions, then one has to put forward in the right manner, in a constructive way, with the aim to improve the overall system, with the aim to like for the welfare of the Prabhupada's movement in that sense. So in that sense, the point I was thinking about the neutrality, that and about this point about um, uh, be a lamb at home and lion at chase. Actually, this is Prabhupada's statement. We see Bhagavatam's how Indra, Prithu Maharaj, he stopped fighting with Indra, who was a Karma Mishra Bhakta. Uh, but at the same time, he would actually fight against other people, adharmic people. So in that way, these principles are eternal principles. So whether the decisions are made according to that, or how they, everyone, people have good intentions, but sometimes it is important to know like what is the way of thinking in making the decision, because these things keep happening. It is not just a recent incident of Bangladesh itself, many events have happened. India, so many places, north, south, everywhere. Somanath temple so many times destroyed, Srirangam or Vrindavan. So one of the thing we see generally, people, devotees or Hindu society, they sometimes people don't have the fighting spirit actually. Fighting spirit means fighting spirit is exhibited by different people. Brahmanas fight, show their fighting spirit against Ajnana. Kshatriyas physically. So sometimes we lose that fighting spirit. So therefore, then that in turn affects us only. So therefore, these things also have to be taught, and we can find the references in the Shastra only. I think last time in one of the batches I was mentioning, like Kunti, when Krishna came as a peace messenger to Hastinapur, when the peace messenger, that mission failed, and when you read the conversation between Kunti and Krishna, what Kunti tells to Krishna, Kunti says to Krishna that when you go to meet Yudhishthir, please give this following message. She tells a story also, and she says that tell Yudhishthir to fight with great courage and not to be a coward. So we find Bhagavatam presents only the Kunti's prayers. That is the only thing about Kunti in the Bhagavatam actually. But the same Kunti is actually telling to Yudhishthir about to fight with a great fighting spirit, not to be a coward. And this is also exhibited by our own founder Acharya. So therefore, we have to think in terms of that. So I just mentioned my point about whatever my thoughts. If it has caused some doubts or something, that I'm open. But
No, I appreciate Prabhuji the fighting spirit, and I feel what you shared in terms of a principle to be considered. I have no I feel happy on that. Only I was concerned that none of us sitting here actually know the full context of why the GBC made some decisions. So all that has to be in place to discuss anything where, suppose constructive criticism means go to the authority, ask Prabhuji why you did it. And then he may share his principles and we may share, Prabhu, but what about this? Like you shared the idea of what Srila Prabhupada did in Juhu. Okay, so suppose we go to the authorities and ask, sir, Juhu mein this has happened, so shouldn't you do it? Then he may share what other principles from Prabhupada context, because many Prabhupada said and Prabhupada did can be quoted. And then the overall picture comes out. But when we are discussing among ourselves and there is no person who can actually give the reference of then GBC is put in the court without having any clarity on what they had to say on it. So that is where the constructive criticism can become a difficult thing.
Yeah, better would be like, okay, if a person is having a serious doubt, he will jot down the list of points he has, say 4 or 5 points, then bring appropriate references, and then draft a proper thing, and then go to the right authority, and then discuss with them, seek an explanation.
Yeah.
And then that should be done instead of just, because even when we discuss with others, it should be in a constructive way. But we can do that better way to make a proper presentation, proper points, and then discuss with the concerned person.
This is something we can approach, and of course, like Prabhuji has said, we can ask, and but there is always a merit in discussing what, because if it goes in a like much back in history, then we cannot meet people. But in a class, discussing the scenarios and discussing different angles can broaden the vision, because we cannot always. There is also another way of seeing this. I feel that when we discuss the scenarios in different angles, then become more clear, because it's a classroom situation. Now, of course, we have a chance to meet and then check about this one particular situation. But for overall development, I think we have to, like, we are always discussing scriptures and always understanding multiple angles. Actually, what can we learn in this, and what should be a devotee's response? So I think that way it can benefit to understand actually. And of course, like different devotees always can come with a different angles in either direction, so that the overall holistic understanding is developed about a particular issue, like that. About this constructive criticism, Prabhuji, means I don't know how much it plays in a spiritual society, because at one place we're supposed to be following the line in order, humble, that's one plan. And at the same time, we want society to go in the right direction. But
See.
what are the places, like we see Srila Prabhupada, he was Grahastha that time, and but he went to ask puja, and the offering he made was very explosive kind of, criticizing what is happening in a Gaudiya Math. That time he was no authority position, we understand, but he told, like, this is what Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur is said, and this is what you're doing. And he was like, so Prabhupada, we see actually he used a particular way, but what is a way it can be really constructive, not offend, and contribute to growth? And I'm asking very practical terms,
Yeah,
not
constructive way means that
Or-
which is based on a particular principle and with the aim of improving the situation, with the aim of improving the situation of the, say, movement or the society, and based on a particular principle. Like, for example, see, in the 10th canto, that episode of Brahmana stealing the Mahavishnu stealing the sons of the Brahmanas, that story comes. So if you read in the 10th canto, that when the Brahmana loses his son, and the words the Brahmana comes and speaks to the king, they are very sharp words actually. He says that, what is this king? This king is like he's not doing his duty of protection. He's practically like a eunuch. What is the use of this king? How can he allow my son to die when the parents are alive? So he makes a very strong statement about Ugrasena and other people, Krishna, Balram, other people also. But they didn't do anything to that Brahmana actually. Because one thing, okay, we may be speaking in emotional state, one may think like that, but when otherwise he spoke on the basis of principles only. Because the Kshatriya's duty is to give protection. And he's telling that how his son was not protected. The son died as soon as he was born. So what I want to focus is that 10 times he came and spoke. Normally, sometimes in authoritarian society, suppose if one person raises some question about the authority, then immediately power would be used to suppress that person. So this person is trying to create rumors, or is creating some negativity, is creating loss of faith in the authority among the other people. But here this Brahmana, if you read those words, he speaks very sharp words against the Ugrasena. But they didn't do anything against the Brahmana. 10 times he came and spoke the same thing. So, and Ugrasena, is it that he didn't have any power? Like Bhagavatam says that Ugrasena had some 10 million bodyguards actually. That was the extent of power he had. But still, they didn't exercise that power over a Brahmana who was actually Brahmana and who was making a principle, who was making a point based on the right principle, how the Kshatriya did not offer protection. Therefore, his son died. So therefore, they didn't try to suppress his voice. So that is the strength of the Varnashram system. The Varnashram system, yeah, in the name of freedom of expression, you don't allow anybody to spread some rumors and create some nonsense, spread some nonsense. At the same time, when somebody is presenting something based on right principles that should not be suppressed, then otherwise it's the system, maybe people in the top.
It has to
feel
be
some
based
little
on
insecure.
scriptures. It has to be based on scriptures.
It should be based on the right principles, based on scriptures. Should be constructive. That should not be suppressed, actually.
So that again, one angle would be still we are part of systems. So in the end, we have to go by the word which comes, right?
So this is just how the because currently, as I mentioned, when we discussed about Varnashram not only with respect to our grahasthas, they don't have the occupation according to their Varna and ashram, or somebody may not be situated in the proper ashram or without the ashram. So Varnashram is not only is disturbed in Kali Yuga, not only in the different lives of the people, but overall, if we see the society also, we have to see how much the Varnashram principles are followed. In the Varnashram society, the Brahmana was given such an independence, Brahmana in the true sense, was given such an independence, when the Brahmana could actually speak strong words against the highest authority, the king, but still nothing was done to him in the Varnashram society. So in that sense, it's a thing to, something to introspect, how much such kind of this thing is prevalent in the current society, including our society. We have to think about it, because sometimes when somebody is giving some constructive comment, so it may be perceived, oh, this person is trying to spread some negativity or create some distrust, or and power may be used to suppress that. And sometimes it has happened in the past also. Maybe it is improving, but these things are to be analyzed, critically analyzed, and thought about it properly.
And I think when one who's raising, he has to be very detached from what, because he is only thinker. He's not acting in those terms, and he may not understand all the angles. That is,
One is rising. Yeah, one should not be attached to one's opinion. Vidura, he gave all the time good advice all the time. But practically, not even once his advice was accepted by Duryodhana or Dhritarashtra. But still, he didn't stop giving the right advice. That was his role. So Vidura is an excellent example that, in fact, at the end, he was thrown out of the Hastinapur. But he never stopped playing his role of giving the right advice. So person who is giving this one should be detached. One should just speak the truth according to the
because
Shastra,
like if somebody is just thinker based on scriptures, but as you told, everything is so mixed now. So just by scriptural giving advice, no, we don't understand everything is the right picture, because other things are also not in line with scripture, the whole society also. So even
the
our advice
principle and the application current scenario, and so it has to be discussed with others. Other people may have different point of view. What is their point of view? How there's an opportunity to learn and have a dialogue actually. Hare Krishna. So we'll stop here. I think we are a little lagging behind. So tomorrow we'll complete this chapter and go to the complete next chapter also.